This lab is to introduce you to the language of medicine used in the anatomy physiology course, and we also going to introduce you to the general orientation to human anatomy. The history of anatomical terminologies are from Greek and Latin roots. There are many differences in analytical terminology and regular English words. For example, the plural form will vary from word to word, and adjective form of a term can appear different than noun form. In English, large means magnus in Latin. So when we describe larger or largest, so we just need to add er or est in English. But in Latin, we use magnus, we use major, we use maximum. So you can see they're very different than normal English. This will create a lot of difficulties for students to memorize those terminologies and spell them correctly. This table will give you an example how the plural ending should be used when you have a single word end with those letters. So axilla, axilli, so those are for the word end with a. Then you have other things, the word end with on, the plural form will end with a. For example, ganglion, the plural form will be ganglia. So this table can help you to get used to how the anatomical terminologies are different from regular English word. So pronunciation is very difficult for majority of people who are in the medical field. So there are many tools can help us pronounce precisely or pronounce better. I use dictionary.com. Dictionary.com will teach me how to pronounce the word I don't know. It's important to pronounce correctly and precisely. So this will be a long-term goal for you, and you should start to pay attention from now on about the pronunciation. Talking about those terminologies, now this graph here shows you how the organs are named with normal English and how they are supposed to be named in medical field. For example, nose should be called nasal in anatomy physiology course. Mouth should be called oral. Cervical is neck related. Pectoral is about chest area. Sternal means middle thorax. There's a difference between male and the female body, so you can look at those. Some terminologies are common, except the reproductive organs and the secondary sexual characteristics. When we examine a person, we need to use the directional terms. Anatomical position is when this person stands with their palms open. So when we talk about the left or right, we're talking about this person's left or right. So the top we'll call it superior, the bottom we'll call it inferior. Then distal is toward the end, proximal is toward the joints. So proximal is the connecting point to the body. The medial is in the middle, lateral is on the side. The directional terms in human, they're in pairs. Ventral will pair with dorsal. Ventral means toward the front or belly. Dorsal means toward the back or spine. You can give me an example using ventral or dorsal. My nose is ventral to my ear. Anterior, posterior. Anterior also means toward the ventral side. Posterior means toward the dorsal side. Cephalic means toward the head or superior end. Rostral toward the forehead or nose. Then caudal means toward the tail or inferior end. So you can see, a lot of terminologies, they talk about the same thing. For example, ventral, anterior, dorsal, posterior. Those two terminologies are actually similar. All talking about front versus the back. Superior, inferior, medial, lateral, proximal, distal. So those are very easy to understand. Superior is above, inferior is below, medial is in the middle of the body, lateral is away from the middle. Proximal is closer to the point of attachment or origin. Distal is further away from the point of attachment. For example, my bicep is proximal to my fingers, to my phalanges. Lateral. Lateral means on the side of the body. So we have two types of laterals. One is ipsilateral, the other one is a contralateral. Ipsilateral means on the same side of the body. Contralateral means on the opposite sides of the body. And superficial is on the surface, deep is inside. So this table will help you understand the anatomical position. This figure will explain the table in the previous slide really well. It shows you the relative term. You can use those organs as example to practice using those terms. For example, the liver is superior to intestine. The lung is deep compared to the rib cage. Humerus is proximal compared to the radius or ulna. So you can use those organs or structures to practice the terminology described in the last couple slides. Our body has cavities. This cavity in the skull is called cranial cavity. The organ in there is brain. There are membranes lines along the internal wall of the cavity. Those are the serous membranes. The membranes in the cranial cavity is called meninges. Vertebral canal is also a cavity. The spinal cord runs inside of it. There's also meninges lines along the vertebral canal. Thoracic cavity has lungs and a heart. So each organ has two layers of membranes wrap around it. Between those two layers, they form a pleural cavity. Within the abdominal cavity, we have digestive organs, spleen, kidney. Within the pelvic cavity, we have bladder, rectum, reproductive organs. So abdominal and the pelvic cavity, there's no separation. They are one large cavity. But between the thoracic cavity and the abdominal pelvic cavity, there's a separation called a diaphragm. So this is a diaphragm, separates the thoracic cavity and the abdominal cavity. And here's the pelvic cavity, but there's no separation. Within the thoracic cavity, we have lung and the heart. So outside of lungs, we have membranes wrap around it. These membranes are serous membranes we talk about in chapter 5. So if you zoom these membranes, you can see those membranes has two big layers. The outer layer is the parietal pleura. The inner layer is close to the organ. This is the visceral pleura. This layer will cover the lung. So between those layers, there's a space called the pleural cavity. So within that pleural cavity, there are fluids there. The similar structure for the heart. So heart also has two membranes wrap around it. So between those two membranes, this is called pericardial cavity. The visceral pericardial covers the heart. The outside membrane is the parietal pericardial. You can see the serous membrane lies along the wall of the cavity. It also covers organs. So all the organs like liver, stomach, intestine, they are all covered by serous membrane. Then the membrane lines along the wall, it's still the serous membrane structure, but they change the name, called the parietal peritoneum. Then the serous membrane covers the organs are called visceral peritoneum. So we learned the cavities. Now we need to know what organs are in the cavity. We already mentioned some of them before. If we look at the abdominal pelvic cavity, you can see they are divided into 4 regions. Right upper quarter region, right upper quadrant, left upper quadrant, right lower quadrant, and the left lower quadrant. So there are 4 quadrants here. So there are different organs within each quadrant. The purpose of this is easy for doctors to examine patients and to be precise about which region their organs having problems. The next terminology we need to introduce you is the plane. So when we dissect human organisms, there are different ways to dissect them. We can have transverse plane, horizontal with the floor. We have the sagittal plane, split the person in half. Then we have the frontal plane, which slices the person from the side. So sagittal cut, which is cut the person, split them into half. They have middle sagittal plane. They have the parallel sagittal plane. Middle sagittal plane is to devise an equal left and the right. Parallel sagittal plane divides into unequal left and the right. There's another way to dissect the organism, the human organism, is oblique plane. Transverse plane, parallel is the floor, but oblique plane, we have an angle. Here are some pictures to show you the organs after they were transverse dissected. This shows you the sagittal section, the frontal section. There are 12 organ systems in our body. Each organ systems play different roles, but all these organ systems work together to maintain human homeostasis. So those organ systems, each of them have different functions. A&P course will teach you all these organs, their structures, and their functions. Integument is for protection. In addition to protection, integument system have many other functions: skeletal, muscular, lymphatic, respiratory, urinary. So in Bio 350, we're going to cover integument, skeletal system, muscular system, and also nerve system. The rest of the systems will be covered in A&P 2. Bio 351 course. So make sure you look at those organ systems, then look at the detailed description of what organs are included in each system and what is the major function of each system. That's all for this lab.